Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Wednesday, March 1st. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Indiana game is in 185 days, the game against Michigan in 269 days. The fact that it is March means that spring football is, in fact, almost here. In fact, it is less than a week away. Tuesday, March 7th will be the first day of spring ball. That also means we are wrapping up our final couple days of pre-spring interviews. This might end up being the final one of those shows before we actually get to spring ball. There's a lot of other stuff going on this week. We'll get to some of that a little later on in the show. But the final pre-spring interview I wanted to bring you is with quarterbacks coach Corey Dennis. He is going to be obviously in charge of one of the units that is at the very center, the center of the spotlight this year, heading into spring ball, as Ohio State tries to figure out who is going to be its next quarterback following C.J. Stroud. Kyle McCord, Devin Brown going to be doing battle this spring to try and figure out who that starting quarterback is going to be. And that starting quarterback battle, that's something we haven't really seen a whole heck of a lot recently. They haven't had a really true quarterback battle for quite a while. So how do they go about balancing reps, and what are they going to base this decision on? Here was Corey Dennis discussing all of that.
So as you go through it, reps are obviously important, right? Like that's what makes a quarterback, and for a young quarterback, for his growth and development, are reps. So for him to get reps, those are something that you always think about and you always talk about, and you've always done it, right? You say there hasn't been one recently, but between Coach Day and myself, we've seen a lot of quarterback battles at Ohio State. So we've kind of managed it and we've seen how to do it, and it'll be for sure thought out and categorized, and we'll know who gets what play and when they get it and who they get it with. Well, I think what we do in the off-season program with Coach Mick gives all those guys an opportunity to be a leader and just be around the guys. And I think just right now in this point is just how can you be vocal, and we always talk about not really as a leadership aspect is like how can you be felt, like how when you walk into a room people know that, hey man, you just walked into a room. Where the great ones that we've had here at Ohio State, you knew exactly when Justin Fields walked into a room, you knew when JT walked into a room, you knew when CJ walked into a room. And I think that just letting them feel you is good, if that makes sense.
I mentioned just a second ago, of course, that Corey Dennis and Ryan Day and Brian Hartline, they've been around quarterback battles at Ohio State before. So how much do they learn from having done this before? What have they learned from going through the Dwayne Haskins versus Joe Burrow battle of 2017, for example?
The one thing that's important, right, is the outside world paints this crazy, fierce quarterback battle. Now it is. It's uber competitive. Guys are always trying to maximize, and the guys are always trying to capitalize. But that room knows that they need each other, right? So those guys lean on each other in between plays, or how they talk about things, or hey, what did you see? This is what I saw. They watch film together every day. So I think that's one piece that you've realized that you have to bring them together, and everybody's different, right? And so what one guy might need to work on, the other guy might not need to work on. And so how can you still, you obviously have to find your quarterback, but you're still trying to grow the room and elevate the room every day.
Ohio State fans have not seen a whole heck of a lot of either Kyle McCord or Devin Brown on the field over the last couple of years. I think there's a general perception that maybe Kyle McCord is more of a thrower, Devin Brown's maybe more of a little bit of a runner. But, is that unfair to just sort of pigeonhole those guys in that way? Does that sort of understate each guy's ability to do the other thing?
I wouldn't say that they're night and day different, but they are different. But that's kind of what it is. With all quarterbacks, they all have different traits that one guy leans on, one guy may not lean on, one guy has a strength. And at the end of the day, it's you try to maximize all your weaknesses to get them to become strengths.
Other than who is going to be the starting quarterback for that Indiana game, and maybe one of the bigger questions going on right now is, when are they going to have an answer on that quarterback battle? Ryan Day has talked about, ideally wanting to have an answer coming out of spring, but obviously a number of previous quarterback battles have dragged into fall camp. And in the case of JT Barrett and Cardale Jones in 2015, it went basically to the sideline at Virginia Tech before there was an actual decision there. So what is the timetable for the decision this time? What is Corey Dennis hoping for anyway?
I don't think that, it might not be different, right? Like during the competition in the past, or you always want somebody to project and go and do it. So, but I'm on the same page as Coach Day. You hope someone jumps out and takes the reins, and they're the guy at the end of the spring for sure.
Those two guys who are going to be doing battle for that starting quarterback job, they're going to be taking over C.J. Stroud's job. And while they're heading into a very big week to start their battle for that job, this is a big week for C.J. Stroud as well. He is at the Combine. So are Kevin Noon. So is Mark Givler. So we'll have a bunch of Combine coverage for you a little later on the week at BuckeyeHuddle.com. But this is a very big week for C.J. Stroud, who is trying to set himself apart from the rest of the quarterbacks and earn a spot in the top 10, maybe top 5 of this year's NFL draft. So at Ohio State, what was it that set C.J. Stroud apart?
There's been a lot of great quarterbacks come through Ohio State, starting with, JT and Cardell and Joe, Dwayne, Justin, CJ, and they're all unique in so many different ways. I think one thing that separates CJ just even from everybody is just, one was his vision of the field was unbelievable, and the work ethic that he put in the film room. And I think that what he's done in the film room the past couple of years has really set a foundation for the young guys. It's set a foundation for Kyle McCord. It's set a foundation for Devin, and they know what it takes, and they know the work that you have to put in to compete at a high level at a place like Ohio State.
One of the things about being a leader on the team and is about having self-confidence, really believing in yourself and therefore getting everyone else to believe in you as well. So with everything else around those guys, how important is that? Is it maybe even more important this year than it would be in a normal year for the quarterback?
Self-confidence is huge. Like, you see it all over the field. Why does a guy take a next step from high school to college to the pro? His talent didn't change. I mean, they've maybe been around different pieces, but yeah, you have to have self-confidence and you have to believe in yourself, especially at the quarterback position, because when you take the field and you look in a huddle, you want all those guys to sit there and look and believe in you. And so if they have confidence in you, then that kind of gives them a confidence in themselves.
It's all well and good to say, okay, you just need to be confident in yourself. You need to believe in yourself. Okay, but how do you do that without game experience?
I mean, our practices are pretty competitive, right? I mean, we get after it every day, and getting reps in spring, I mean, that's going to be critical. And that is a huge vital piece in developing a quarterback, and especially a young kid, is just getting those reps, and whatever level it is, whether it's level at the high school, getting those reps, or, you see the rookie NFL guys, that crazy transition from year 1 to 2 because they've gotten those reps as well.
Another guy who is going to be playing quarterback for Ohio State this fall is not yet in Columbus. That is Lincoln Kienholz. He was a sort of late addition to this class. He played his high school ball up in South Dakota, which is a little off the beaten path as far as Ohio State recruiting goes. And the Buckeyes ended up picking him up and as a very late addition to the class after Brock Glenn, who had previously been committed. They sort of parted ways with each other, and Brock Glenn ended up going somewhere else. So now Lincoln Kienholz is a Buckeye. So what was it that Corey Dennis saw in Lincoln Kienholz that really sold him on the fact that, yeah, this is the guy they wanted in the 2023 class?
So Lincoln, just where he is recruiting, like South Dakota and all these kind of things, but then you look and he's an extremely productive guy. And then I was able to go watch a game, watch him play, and it was like 1 versus 2, another highly ranked team in the state, and the guy's a competitor, and he does everything, and he's extremely athletic. He competes. I mean, there was a 2-minute drive that, he doesn't play defense, but they're like, hey, we know that they're going to throw it right here, and they put him back at safety, and I think he had an interception in the state championship game. But I just think his competitiveness, and then his production on the field, and then also him being an athlete and what he can do.
It may have flown a little bit under the radar compared to some of the other additions the Buckeyes made in the transfer portal this offseason, but they added a quarterback as well. His name is Tristan Gebbia. He has played at Oregon State the last few years. So how did they find him? What made them decide that he was going to be someone who was going to be a good addition to this team as well?
Tristan was in the portal. Someone reached out to me. We did our homework, and I mean, he's going to be a huge piece to have, right? He's going to be a guy who, adds depth. I laugh. I think I'm closer to Tristan's age than he is to like Mason Maggs or something like that. We were joking about it in the meeting room. So he's an old soul. It'll be good to have kind of a veteran guy, but I mean, he's played in big games. He's won big games. But just to see and just listen to him talk, the way he carries himself, that'll be a vital piece to have in the room for sure.
You mentioned earlier the Lincoln Kienholz recruitment was a rather short one and sort of a very quick last-minute type thing. But man, it sounds like they had nothing on Tristan Gebbia's recruitment. Did he even visit Ohio State before he committed and drove to Columbus to move there?
Oh yeah, it was an extremely quick process. I know he was packing up a U-Haul, headed somewhere, and then kind of got on the phone, and then he believed in Ohio State. He liked what we had here, and he made a right turn, I guess, and came out this way.
Tristan Gebbia is not the first quarterback to transfer to Ohio State. You may remember a guy named Justin Fields a few years ago, but Fields was sort of the exception to the rule when it comes to Ohio State taking transfer quarterbacks. Fields came in and was immediately the front runner for the starting quarterback job. Most of the other guys they've brought in, Chris Chuganoff or Gunnar Hoke and now Gebbia, those are guys who are not necessarily expected to really compete for that starting job. They're more providing some depth and maybe providing some veteran presence in that room. So how important is that veteran presence, to have that in that quarterback room when there are a lot of other young guys in there?
We've done it in the past, right? With Chris Chuganoff, Gunnar Hoke, and those guys, if they can come in and, just what value that they can have. And it's just that they've seen a lot of college football versus maybe guys who haven't seen it. And just they definitely help the process and they help the feel, and they're just good to have in their room. So, no, I love having a guy like that in.
Where does that pay off? How does that veteran presence pay off the most? Is that something that shows up in the film room? Is that something that shows up on the practice field? Where does that veteran presence really come into play in a room full of otherwise pretty young quarterbacks?
No, I mean, it's really all aspects of it, right? It's the day-to-day aspect, the way to, just a guy like Tristan, he's a two-time captain. So just the way that he commands himself, the way that he presents himself on the field is unbelievable with, what he sees, and then also watching film. And like I believe you said earlier, he does want to be a coach, and so he's diving into it, and he loves to watch film, and so he grabs he'll just his veteranness in a room full of young guys. I mean, that's a great piece to have.
And finally, we're going to talk just a little bit of recruiting. And these are always kind of awkward conversations to have with coaches because according to NCAA rules, they can't talk about any of these guys by names until they sign their letters of intent. And when we're talking about the class of 2024, those guys are still close to 9 months, a little more than 9 months away from signing those letters of intent. So we'll say up front, Dylan Raiola decommitted from Ohio State last year, and now Ohio State is sort of scrambling to find a new quarterback. Okay, so this is not the first time that they have had quarterback drama in some of the recent classes. They've had some decommitments. They've had some guys they've sort of parted ways with, but they've ended up picking up a lot of these guys sort of late in the cycle. Kyle McCord was a relatively early addition, but C.J. Stroud committed relatively late in the cycle. Devin Brown committed relatively late in the cycle. Now Lincoln Kienholz is committed relatively late in the cycle. So you now potentially have the opportunity to sort these things out a little earlier this year. Is it almost better that, you had a decommitment? I'm sure they weren't thrilled with the decommitment, but is it better to at least have that drama happen a little earlier in the cycle this time?
Our timetable at Ohio State is what we're going to do, what we think is best for Ohio State. And a lot of times it's watching a guy play his senior year. It's watching to see what he does and watching to see kind of his progression. So for us, it's all case by case. So it really doesn't matter what the time is we just are looking for the right guy for Ohio State, if that makes sense.
So that will do it for Corey Dennis, and that will do it, I think, for those pre-spring interview previews. I have a bunch of other stuff together of, sort of leftover stuff from Jim Knowles and things like that we just didn't get to earlier in the fall. But here's the thing. This is a crazy busy week at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Kevin Noon, Mark Givler, they just got back from a trip down south to Georgia. They also talked to Chris Henry down in Cincinnati. They talked to him and his 2026 recruitment and being the first guy in the state to be offered by Ohio State and all that kind of stuff. So we got to talk to them about that on some of these shows coming up. Those guys are also at the NFL Combine this week. Oh yeah, Alex Gleitman dropped the most recent edition of his behind the scenes of the 2023 recruiting class story, talking about the linebackers and the defensive backs. We got to get Alex on at some point. Talked yesterday with Devin Radcliffe and was thinking, boy, we need to do more X's and O's shows. So, well, there's a lot of stuff going on this week. And then spring ball starts next Tuesday. Oh boy, how did this turn into a busy time of year? It is, I'm not, no complaints here, but it is definitely a busy time here and a busy time at BuckeyeHuddle.com. You should sign up today. There's going to be a lot of football coverage there on the Combine, on recruiting, on this year's team, and much more. So sign up today, become a part of the fun, all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We will talk to you tomorrow.